Hello, everybody, and welcome to Starting Small Music. I'm Justin McCormick, and you're about to hear a conversation with an artist, musician, and music industry professional on their journey and where they got to where they are today. At Starting Small, we'd like to take you down a journey uncovering the untold stories of your favorite songs and artists. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Starting Small Music Podcast. I'm your host, Justin McCormick, and today we have a very special guest. We have artist and songwriter, Gabriella Rose. Gabriella grew up around music, having two parents that were musicians, and after putting out numerous songs throughout her teenage years and taking a short break, she is back this year with a new sound for all of us. Gabriella has an awesome story and a lot of big things happening this year. I hope you guys enjoy this episode, and we'll see you at the end. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Starting Small Music Podcast. Today we have artist and songwriter Gabriella Rose. Gabriella, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thanks for asking.
So getting right into your life, where did you grow up and what was your childhood like?
So I grew up on a small farm in California,
Really?
in Northern California. Um, yeah, so I lived on like I think 5 acres, and I was homeschooled, and I was in charge of raising chickens and cows, and we had like a hobby farm. So that's where I grew up.
Wow. So was music around your house a lot, or was that something you kind of got into by yourself?
So my mom was actually a musician before she had me, and that's how her and my dad met. They were recording in a studio, and they hit it off pretty well, and then I happened. And then so that led my mom to like stop pursuing music, and she focused on having me. And then so she always raised me, and I grew up with just like being around her singing, and my dad is a he loves like he's a used to be a producer, he's not anymore, but anyways, so they kind of taught me like not they didn't like teach me lessons, but they were I was just around it a lot. And anyways, so that's music's like in my family. And then I picked up a guitar, and I learned how to play off YouTube when I was like 9, and then I just fell in love with it. Kept writing.
Totally. What kind of music were your parents playing around the house, or what kind of music did they play when they were in the industry?
Well, my mom was she really liked Gwen Stefani, and
Yeah,
so she was from Orange County, so she felt very connected to Gwen Stefani, and so she was very pop centric. And then my dad is very 80s, and so I grew up with like Gwen Stefani and the Talking Heads. And so I would my anyways, and then my mom is pretty involved in the church, and so she would play gospel music as well. And so I also learned how to play like Christian music, gospel music, growing up in the church stuff. So
totally. So would you say that's kind of the first music you listened to that really wanted you to get into music yourself, that kind of like made you feel a connection to something like that?
yeah, I'd say that Johnny Cash's gospel record was probably what really got me into it. So yeah.
Oh, that's so cool. So who were like around your town? Did you start playing with some local musicians? Were you playing by yourself? I know you said you were homeschooled. Was it kind of hard to find people to play with growing up?
Yeah, so I was homeschooled, and I kind of played with my brother, and I didn't really get super like really connected into playing gigs until I moved to Washington. And we moved to another farm, not necessarily a working farm, but we had like animals. And I went to an open mic night because I decided I was ready to start performing. And it was at this little music venue in Spokane called the Bartlett. And I just played way over the time I was supposed to. I played like for a half hour or something. And then the owner of the venue just really started mentoring me. And I got connected to like the local scene there, and it was really fantastic.
Is this around the age you started writing your own original material too?
Yeah, I started writing my original songs probably around like 13, 14. Not very good, but everyone starts somewhere.
No,
So,
totally.
yeah.
So you were homeschooled throughout high school, you said too as well?
So I was homeschooled up until eighth or ninth grade, and then I transitioned to public school, and finished out high school. But I've moved around a lot, so it's like I've been to like 10 different schools. So,
Oh, wow. So coming out of high school, did you just right into going into music right out of high school, or did you go to college coming out?
yeah, so I kind of took a break during the pandemic. It hit music pretty hard, and so I took a break, got a job. I was like a Sonic car hop for a year, so I was like a roller skating server, and then so I did that for a year, and then I just kind of like left music aside, and I was just like, I don't have time for this. I can't play anywhere, and then I got back into it. I did go to college, but I just this year I really just was like, okay, let's start over again. And so um, it's been a little bit of a break, and I'm getting back into the swing of things. But yeah.
So kind of getting into the music you're working on now, I see that you're working with manager and producer Jeffrey David, who works with Echosmith. How did you guys meet, and what's that relationship been like for you?
So we actually met. My grandparents were having dinner at a place called Tony's on the Lake, here in Coeur d'Alene, and he he heard Jeffrey talking about how he lived in Pasadena part time, and my grandparents were like, "Well, we live in Pasadena. Let's meet up." And so they started talking, and Jeffrey was like, "Yeah, I'm a producer for a band called Echosmith." And so my grandpa texted me, and he's like, "Have you heard of a band named Echosmith?" And I was like, "Yeah, Grandpa. Like, what are you doing? Like, where are you?" And so he sent like a picture with him, and then my grandpa, of course, was like, "Well, my granddaughter does music, and you got to meet her." And Jeffrey was kind of like, "Yeah, okay, like everyone does music, everyone's granddaughter does music." So, but then Jeffrey actually listened to it, and he decided he signed me to his like new label, and so we've been working together ever since.
Congratulations, that's so awesome. So
Oh, thank you.
have you gotten to write with Echosmith at all, or got to be mentored by them at all?
So I haven't written with Echosmith. I do like I do write most of my own songs, but I have been able to meet two of the band members, and I mean they're crazy. They're always like touring huge stuff. So but I have been able to meet yeah, two of the band members and Jeffrey, and just they've been mentoring me on lots of stuff that, small time people just don't even know about, like hair and makeup and social media and all that kind of stuff. So
Yeah. As someone who makes music too, and like is really into like looking at the songwriters and every part of the music industry, I looked into who like you kind of have like in your sessions, and I saw like you even have like big players like Greg Bissonette, like the touring drummer for Ringo Starr. What's it like to have such legendary musicians playing on your new music?
it's actually insane because I play guitar, but they would say that I don't because I'm like not good. And so I was sitting there, and all of a sudden, so like we did 10 songs and we did it in 12 hours, and they tracked each song in like 10 minutes, 15 minutes. And then Greg just gets on there, and he's just a monster player. And so they were so sweet to me, but I was just sitting there being like, oh my gosh, like it had now been launched into like the big time players, and I'm like, I gotta catch up, I gotta catch up. And so they're just so sweet, so humble, and like so encouraging. And Greg is just like, you gotta meet him. He's amazing. He's so sweet.
So out of you've had several singles out of 2018 and 2019 before you took a little break. Do you have a favorite one that you released during that time period?
Yeah, let me think.
I know that's
I'd
like
say,
asking who your favorite kid is, but
well, okay, so my favorite would probably be Lost in Translation. Um, and then I'll say my least favorite, it's The Chair. That's not,
is
that's
there a
not,
reason?
well, I was I was kind of an annoying kid, and I had read Truman Capote's In Cold Blood about like the death penalty, and I just thought that I would be the voice for that. And I wrote a song called The Chair about the electric chair, and I just get such cringe whenever I listen to it. It's like, dude, you're like 15, you just read a book for the first time, and now you're gonna like talk about this complex thing. So, yeah, I think that's dumb.
Now, was Lost in Translation was your debut single, correct?
Yes.
So how was that putting your first? How did you make that decision to make that your first single to release to the people?
So I had a producer that I worked with, Chris Molitor, and I showed up with like a I used to write all of my music in little notebooks, and so I showed up with like 10 notebooks, and he was like, "Okay, we can't do 10 notebooks of songs." So he was looking through them and he saw Lost in Translation and he was like, "That name sounds familiar." And I was like, "Yeah, I wrote it about the movie." Lost in Translation, and he was like, "Well, that's really interesting." And so he helped me put together the single and kind of create a vision for it. So it's like kind of like a 50s, 60s pop inspired song. And so he kind of orchestrated the sound of it. And yeah, and it was probably the most playable song of the hundreds in the notebooks. So yeah.
So coming out of your last single in 2019, Teenage Fantasy, how does that music compare to the music you're working on now?
Yeah, so Teenage Fantasy was like a complete 360 stylistically. And I tried to like take a dip into electronic pop, and it's not necessarily, I love that genre, but you know, I love a lot of genres and doesn't mean that I can necessarily do it. And so this new album is very cowboy pop, so kind of very inspired by like Johnny Cash or Orville Peck, kind of like that Western 50s cowboy stuff. Lots of saddles and boots and horses and things like that. So,
Totally. Now, I like to close all my interviews out by asking my guests if there's something that you've learned during your time, like trying to pursue this career as a musician, and kind of what your advice would be to people that are pursuing music, you know?
yeah, I'd say that especially if you're young in the industry, there's like two things, especially being like a young woman. There's going to be a lot of people that are going to try to pressure you into becoming someone that you necessarily don't want to be. And as long as you know your boundaries, you know who you are and what you're comfortable doing and what you're comfortable with being, like, just because something's necessarily trending or something is going to look good from a marketing standpoint, it doesn't mean that you need to be that. And I just think that, and also for young people, like a lot of people had an identity crisis when I turned 20 because I'm not a teenager anymore. And it's like you can still make good music after you're like, just because you're not 15 anymore. You don't have to be that 15, 16-year-old prodigy. You can do music well into your 70s, 80s, like Iggy Pop. Music is for everyone.
Well, guys, there you have it, my conversation with Gabriella Rose. Gabriella, thank you again so much for coming on the show. I had a great time talking with you. Everyone go follow her on Instagram at gabriella.rose.music. I want to give a big thank you to TBD Coffee Co. for being the official coffee of Starting Small Music. Check them out at tbdcoffeeco.com. And make sure to come back next week to hear my conversation with hit songwriter for Big Loud, Rocky Block. Check out Starting Small Music on YouTube to see all the video content from our interviews. And also, follow Starting Small Music on Instagram at Starting Small Music and let us know who you'd like to hear on the podcast next. And remember, everyone starts small.